This video highlights some of the challenges to students understanding their feedback and how to address them. So what are the issues we need to consider when understanding feedback as a learner? There's issues around the clarity of the message, the student's goals and motivations for learning, and then the idea that feedback needs to be a dialogue, it needs to be reciprocal and needs to be co-constructed. We need to think about how the student prepares to receive that feedback and how they use that feedback to construct their own meanings. Clarity of message is a major problem and a major challenge, and the challenge is the language we use in feedback. Is it accessible to the student? Do they understand the meaning of the comments we provide and the guidance that we offer? Dominant disciplinary discourses need to be made explicit in the feedback that we provide. Students need to be encouraged to articulate their tacit knowledge, for example, existing motives, ideas, opinions, beliefs, knowledgeable skills, and those sorts of disciplinary ideas. Given the individual differences between learners, the feedback message needs to be kept simple and focused on what matters most and has the biggest impact on the learner. Another key area is looking at the goals and motivations for feedback. Feedback should be seen as a valuable and precious resource and of high value to students. They're gaining the rare and precious insight of an experienced professional on their work. We need to develop students' abilities to identify areas they would like to focus on and the feedback that they need for those. Training needs to encourage students to be more discerning in how they seek, give and utilise feedback in order to move away from a receipt model of feedback being provided to them and them being passive recipients of it. We need to do this if feedback is to be unshackled and its potential to impact practice is realised. Thinking of feedback as a process means there need to be active dialogue and discussion between the learners and others. That could either be other learners and or the educator themselves. The importance of co-constructive dialogue between the educator and the student to support understanding of the assessment is acknowledged. Training that focuses on supporting students to better understand feedback through reinforcement is an outmoded paradigm that does not sufficiently acknowledge the role of the learner as author and owner of the assessment feedback, and that exacerbates the problem. Feedback needs to be dialogic to support student self-regulation. Efforts should be placed on those interactional features that promote and sustain feedback dialogue. Feedback should be based on well-defined, well-negotiated goals, rather than purely on the quality of the learner's performance, given the numerous goals, specified and unspecified, in play and impacting on student decisions. People are unlikely to change in response to data delivery and methods that attack their self-perceptions, so efforts need to be placed on checking students' interpretation of and use of feedback, and does the feedback achieve what we need it to achieve. Feedback also needs to be seen as a reciprocal process, with feedback available from different sources and importantly seeing the learner as a key feedback resource. Students need to be able to ask questions in an open and non-threatening environment. It should be remembered that opening opportunities for students to come and talk to you in office hours is not likely to be taken up by the less confident student and typically the ones who need the most guidance. So we need to think of ways of making this reciprocity as accessible and non-threatening as possible. It helps to think of feedback as co-constructed and multifaceted to include self-generation of feedback. Encouraging the students to self-critique their own work is important, and we need to guide students in seeking and in their utilisation of feedback cues from the environment. The potential impact of peer feedback on learning and understanding is extremely potent, and this will be discussed in more depth in the module that focuses on subdimension AF3. Students need to prepare for feedback. Where students have insufficient knowledge, detailed feedback might be inappropriate, as students may not be able to process this. Similarly, sufficient time is needed for students to process feedback messages prior to discussions about how to move work forwards. This introduces the notion of space to process feedback to maximise effectiveness of feedback encounters with others. Finally, students need opportunities to construct their own meaning from the feedback. That's opportunities to do something with the feedback and have multiple opportunities to assess work for themselves and internalise those requirements of that assessment. So that ability to assess their own work and assess their own capabilities gives them internalisation of those marking criteria and those standards. So those are some key issues to consider when helping students understand and make use of their feedback.